All right. So culture plays a big role in psychological disorders or thinking about them. Culture plays a big role in everything. Some definitions that you probably heard before, but they bear just making sure we're all on the same page. Culture involves widely shared customs, beliefs, values, norms, institutions like marriage, and other communal creations that are passed from one generation to the next. So, what did people do in the family? What is the legal system's role? What are male and female roles? And you know that culture is always changing, so a lot of this changes as the culture changes. But at any point in time, if you sliced it open, you would see what people's ideas of each of those were at that time. Dress, language, religion, spirituality, politics, art, music, blah, blah, blah. And of course, there are tons of differences within the general culture, but we're talking overall, there is a general system that has some differences and similarities. It also involves a recording of conditions that led to innovations and the behaviors to respond to those conditions. All kinds of things we take for granted. When people needed to make fire, when people needed to build a car and make round wheels, when people needed to create the next iPhone and whatever. These are all innovations, and people recorded the situations that led to the need for those innovations and how you should respond to it next time. Not that people always follow the past, but that is part of the culture, it's part of the collective knowledge. It's important to remember that differences and similarities in all the above exist within cultures, which I said a second ago. All right, it is influenced by where you live, what's the geography of that place, the climate, the natural resources, how isolated are you, how many people live there, how well off you are, affluency, what technology, what government do you have access to, what institutions do you have access to, is media impacting your life or not, what's your socio-cultural history, how many people have you oppressed, how much have you been okay with, what religion, temperament, personality of the members of the culture, I mean, so much, practically everything. Ethnicity and ethnic identity. So ethnicity is the membership in a group with a specific heritage, values, or beliefs and customs. And people of different ethnic groups can share a culture. So culture is the larger circle around the ethnic group. So one's ethnic identity is how much have you explored your own ethnicity and your own culture, and how connected to that do you feel? So the more you've explored and the more connected you feel, the better psychological health you have. So do you know why, for example, your grandmother always does certain traditions at Christmas? Or do you know why your family even celebrates Christmas? Or do you know where your family came from? What country, what immigration route. There's all kinds of things to then know to connect yourself to. And there's a whole bigger discussion of acculturation that we won't get into here, but that's where if you don't feel as connected to your culture because you're trying to be part of some other culture, that's usually linked to having poorer psychological health because your identity is a little bit split and you're not sure exactly who you are or want to be. So the idea of cross-cultural psychology is to study the effects that culture has on the behavior, feelings, and thoughts of those people in each culture compared to people in other cultures. Looking for differences and then looking for similarities, which they consider universals. And an example of a universal, there's been quite a bit of research on the big five: neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, that they are similar across cultures. They are traits that are found across cultures. So there's some belief then that is something that we can compare people by. All right, so how does culture and psychology interact? They try to understand people, and they try to understand people in their culture. And what does that do? They try to remember that the world has globalized, so people more and more, because of more communication, travel, trade, have more more experience with and interaction with other cultures. So this leads them to have a cultural identity within their local culture, but also adopting some behaviors to interact with people from other cultures. That may happen more or less of a degree in each of your individual lives. You can think through that. But the idea is you live a little bit of bicultural. And then one of the main influences on our behaviors, thoughts, feelings is your culture, because you view everything compared to what you know, what you were brought up with. In therapy, or really otherwise, but these are often talked about in therapy, the psychologist works to understand culture without stereotyping, without just saying, oh, I see that you are African American, so therefore you will feel this. And that's completely inappropriate. But knowing some general themes that traditionally have been determined for different cultures is going in with having done some preparation. So a bit of an understanding that normal is what the culture suggests is normal. And then more specifically, and your book points out a few themes that African American clients or African American people might have at the forefront of their mind more than other groups would be themes of racism, the importance that the role that family plays, the important role that religion plays in their life. Asian American themes of self-restraint, being quieter, not being someone who is taking the lead, and remembering the mind-body-spirit link, remembering that they're collectivist versus individualist, which is I do something as part of a group. We are all part of a group working toward a common goal, whereas more the United States culture is I'm out to get this for myself. People don't necessarily in this United States culture work as a group. An Asian American person would much more see themselves as part of a group. Hispanic American theme of family is important in your life, social gatherings, the respect within and without of the family. And then Native American themes of the tribal culture, which is really similar to the collectivist. And then spiritual, and then making sure to understand what facial nonverbals or body posture nonverbals you are giving off, because they can be offensive. And of course, all of these are part of everyone's culture to some degree, and they're things to think about, but research would just suggest these are themes that come up more often in these groups to be aware of. And then one other thing related to culture is the concept of culture-bound or culture-specific syndromes. And this is the idea that they occur in one culture, but are rare or non-existent in others. And so the idea is some of them may be related to cultural beliefs or superstitions that have just sort of been over-intensified or exacerbated. So Taijin Kyofu Sho, TKS, is mentioned in your book. Men in Japan fear embarrassing others, and they fear it to a great degree. It can be paralyzing. I'm so worried about offending you or embarrassing you, I can't say anything, I can't be near you. Anorexia nervosa and or dissociative identity disorder are considered more United States related culture syndromes that aren't seen as much in other cultures. And on page 98, they list a number of them: amok, attack de nervios, dot, falling out or blacking out, ghost sickness, koro, czar. People tend to always be interested in these. My personal view is that there are a few that seem very specific to certain cultures, like the maybe related to cultural beliefs or superstitions. Others, I think they're just offshoots of concerns that a lot of countries have. So like attack de nervios, that to me sounds a little bit somewhere between panic disorder and other anxiety disorders, not so different from how someone in the United States might experience it, but they tend to think of it as potentially different. Falling out or blacking out, I would say, feels a little similar to a potential panic disorder. It's just that there is a blacking out part that isn't always the same, but it could be a symptom. And then a variety of the others, no, I don't hear about all of those in United States related culture, but I think there's probably some more similarities to be found than just that have really been talked about. But nevertheless, people find it interesting, and so you can look through that table to see a few other examples.